The frigid air of December 1944 cuts through the Ardennes forest as American soldiers huddle in hastily dug foxholes. Snow falls silently, muffling the distant rumble of German artillery. Lieutenant James Harrington, a former history professor turned intelligence officer, stares at intercepted German communications with growing dread. "These reports can't be accurate," he whispers to Captain Miller, his face illuminated by flickering lamplight. "Hitler's promising weapons that defy physics itself." Miller's eyes narrow, his fingers tracing the worn photo of his brother, killed at Normandy. Whether they exist or not doesn't matter. The brass believes they do, and they're sending us behind enemy lines to find proof. The thunderous crack of nearby mortar fire sends dirt showering over their maps. A young private, barely 18, flinches violently, his hands shaking uncontrollably around his rifle. "We leave at dawn," Harrington announces, locking eyes with each member of his small reconnaissance team. "If these wonder weapons are real, they could change everything." As dawn approaches, Harrington stands alone, watching his breath crystallize in the air. An elderly German civilian they'd captured had whispered something that haunts him. "Die Wunderwaffen sind nicht das, was Sie fürchten sollten. The wonder weapons are not what you should fear." Behind him, the team prepares, unaware that one among them has already sent a coded message to German lines. 3 months earlier, Harrington had been examining captured documents at Allied headquarters in London when General Patterson summoned him. "Your academic background makes you uniquely qualified for this," Patterson said, sliding a folder across his desk. "German scientists have been developing technologies beyond our comprehension. Rockets that can hit London from hundreds of miles away, jets that outpace our fastest fighters, and rumors of something called Die Glock, a bell-shaped device that might alter the very fabric of reality." Harrington's mind flashed back to Princeton, where theoretical physicists had whispered about atomic research. "Sir, many of these claims are scientifically impossible," said the man whose colleagues are splitting atoms in New Mexico. Patterson countered. "Hitler's desperate. And desperate men make desperate claims." A yellowed photograph fell from the folder, Harrington standing beside Werner Heisenberg before the war. His stomach tightened. They'd been colleagues, friends even, before Heisenberg returned to Germany. "Your history with Heisenberg is precisely why you're being deployed," Patterson explained. "You understand how these scientific minds work." That night, Harrington dreamed of his wife Sarah, killed in the London Blitz 2 years earlier. He'd enlisted the next day, abandoning academia for vengeance. The team assembled for the Ardennes mission carried their own demons. Captain Miller had lost his brother at Omaha Beach. Sergeant Garcia's hometown of San Diego had been the target of a Japanese submarine attack. Private Reynolds was a demolitions expert whose hands never stopped trembling, not from fear, but from witnessing the Dresden bombing firsthand as part of an observer unit. The most enigmatic team member was Dr. Eleanor Wright, a cryptographer and physicist who'd worked on the early stages of the Manhattan Project before being mysteriously reassigned. "I'm here because I understand what these weapons could do," she told Harrington during their first briefing, her eyes revealing she knew far more than she could say. The fifth team member, Technical Sergeant Walter Klein, had escaped Germany in 1938. His knowledge of the terrain and language made him invaluable, but his quiet intensity unsettled the others. Their mission had evolved from reconnaissance to potential sabotage. Intelligence suggested a facility near Heidelberg housed prototypes of Hitler's most classified weapons, those his generals were increasingly skeptical about as the Reich crumbled. The Führer promises miracles while soldiers freeze without winter coats. One intercepted communication read. These Wunderwaffen exist mostly in his deteriorating mind. As the team prepared for deployment, Eleanor approached Harrington with a disturbing theory. What if Hitler's claims are strategic? What if he's deliberately leaking false information about impossible weapons? To what end? Harrington asked. To make us waste resources chasing phantoms while he deploys something far more conventional, but equally devastating. Their eyes met, both understanding the implication. Sometimes the greatest deception isn't claiming the impossible, but making your enemy believe you have claimed the impossible. As Harrington watched his team loading gear for the dangerous drop behind German lines, he couldn't shake the feeling they were being played in a game whose rules they didn't understand. Hey, if you're watching this from anywhere in the world, drop a comment below letting us know where you're tuning in from. Your perspective on this historical narrative means a lot to us. The team parachuted into German-controlled territory under the cover of night, their black uniforms melting into darkness as they silently gathered their equipment. The mission: infiltrate a research facility disguised as technicians using forged papers provided by Allied intelligence. 2 days later, huddled in an abandoned hunting cabin, tensions erupted when Captain Miller questioned the reliability of their intelligence. "We're risking everything on reports that read like science fiction," Miller hissed, his breath visible in the cold air. "Anti-gravity devices? Weather control weapons? It's propaganda." "The Germans have already deployed V2 rockets," Eleanor countered. "Technology that seemed impossible just years ago." "There's a difference between advanced engineering and breaking the laws of physics," Harrington interjected, noticing how Klein tensed at the escalating argument. "My brother died following orders that seemed reasonable," Miller said bitterly. "And look where that got him." Garcia, who had been monitoring radio transmissions, suddenly removed his headphones. "Something's happening. German communications just exploded with activity. They're using a code we haven't seen before." Eleanor's eyes widened as she studied the transcribed messages. This is similar to communications from the Peenemünde facility before they launched the first successful V2. That night, as the others slept, Harrington caught Klein sending a radio transmission. Drawing his sidearm, he approached silently. "Who are you really working for, Klein?" The technician's hands froze on the radio dial. "I could ask you the same question, Professor." "What does that mean?" Klein's eyes hardened. "Your friend Heisenberg isn't developing weapons for Hitler. He's deliberately failing, sabotaging the German atomic program from within." The revelation hit Harrington like physical blow. "How could you possibly know that?" "Because I'm his handler," Klein whispered. "And these wonder weapons? They're a distraction orchestrated by scientists trying to end this war before something worse begins." The next morning, as the team prepared to move toward the facility, Eleanor pulled Harrington aside, showing him calculations she'd been working on. If Hitler actually deployed what these reports claim, the energy requirements would be astronomical. They'd need resources Germany simply doesn't have. "Unless they've discovered something we haven't," Harrington suggested. Eleanor's face paled. "That's what frightens me." As they approached the outskirts of the research facility, a complex of concrete buildings nestled against a mountainside, they witnessed something unexpected: German soldiers dismantling equipment and burning documents. "They're abandoning it," Garcia whispered. "Why?" Through binoculars, Harrington observed a group of officers in heated argument. One, a general, gesturing angrily at blueprints before tearing them to pieces. "I can read his lips," Klein murmured. "He's saying, I won't waste more German lives on fantasies while our borders collapse." That night, they infiltrated the nearly deserted facility, finding laboratories filled with prototype aircraft parts, rocket components, and strange bell-shaped devices. Most telling were the abandoned filing cabinets, their contents hastily burned but not completely destroyed. Eleanor reconstructed partial documents, her expression growing increasingly troubled. "These aren't weapon designs," she finally said. "They're elaborate fakes, meant to be captured. There's even instructions on what to accidentally leave behind." A massive deception operation, Harrington realized. But why? The answer came at dawn when Reynolds, who'd been keeping watch, rushed in. "Allied bombers?" he gasped. "Dozens of them, heading towards something to the north." "What's north of here?" Harrington demanded. Klein's face went ashen. "The real facility. This is a decoy." The ground shook with distant explosions as they gathered what intelligence they could. Among the papers, Harrington found a photograph that made his blood run cold. Heisenberg standing beside a device that looked nothing like the prototypes scattered around them. Before they could process this discovery, gunfire erupted outside. German troops had returned. "We're compromised," Miller shouted, returning fire through a shattered window. In the chaos that followed, Reynolds was hit, collapsing into Eleanor's arms. As Garcia provided covering fire, they retreated toward their extraction point, carrying their wounded teammate through snow-covered woods. The Germans wanted us to find this place, Harrington realized as they ran. They led us here while hiding something far worse elsewhere. Klein nodded grimly. The wonder weapons were never the true threat. They were the smokescreen. That night, as they treated Reynolds' wounds in yet another temporary shelter, a disturbing revelation emerged. Miller had been photographing documents and sending them through a separate channel, not to Allied command, but elsewhere. "Who are you reporting to?" Harrington demanded, his pistol leveled at Miller's chest. Miller's laugh was hollow. "Everyone in this room is playing a double game, Professor. Even you." Hey everyone. If you're enjoying this historical narrative, please hit that subscribe button and give us a like. Your support helps us reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers and ensures more content like this is coming your way. Every subscription makes a difference. Dawn broke with the distant thunder of artillery as Harrington tried to make sense of Miller's betrayal. The captain sat bound to a chair, his expression unreadable. "Our intelligence agencies aren't unified," Miller finally said. "While you report to the OSS, I answer to a division concerned that certain technologies might be suppressed after the war." "You're stealing weapon designs?" Garcia asked incredulously. "I'm ensuring America's future security," Miller countered. "Do you really think Russia will be our ally once Hitler falls?" Outside, Klein spotted approaching vehicles through his binoculars. "German patrols. They found us." They had minutes to evacuate, with Reynolds barely conscious and Miller a prisoner. As they gathered their equipment, Eleanor made a devastating discovery. "The radio's been sabotaged. We can't call for extraction." All eyes turned to Miller, who smiled thinly. "Insurance policy." The decision confronting Harrington was impossible. Abandon their prisoner and wounded man to certain death, or risk the entire team trying to save them. The intelligence they'd gathered, proving Hitler's wonder weapons program was largely a deception operation, had to reach Allied command. "We split up," Harrington decided, his voice heavy. "Eleanor and I will take the intelligence east toward American lines. Garcia and Klein will move Reynolds north to the extraction point." "And Miller?" Garcia asked. After a long pause, Harrington handed Garcia a pistol. "Your call, Sergeant." The unspoken weight of this delegation hung in the air. They all understood Miller might not survive, one way or another. As they prepared to separate, a massive explosion shook the forest. Through the trees, they witnessed a blinding flash on the horizon, followed by an unnatural silence. "That's no conventional bomb," Eleanor whispered. Within minutes, German radio channels erupted with panicked communications. Klein translated, his face ashen. "They're saying an entire Allied battalion just vanished." The implications were staggering. Hitler did have a functional wonder weapon after all, not the ones prominently displayed in the decoy facility, but something else entirely. "We need to see it," Harrington decided, changing their plan. "Whatever caused that explosion is what we were really sent to find." Against all military protocol and survival instinct, they moved toward the blast zone, leaving the wounded Reynolds hidden in a makeshift shelter with emergency supplies. Even Miller, recognizing the gravity of the situation, offered strategic insights once Garcia reluctantly untied him. What they found at the blast site defied comprehension. A perfectly circular area of forest, approximately half a mile in diameter, was simply gone. Not burned, not destroyed, but absent, replaced by a perfectly smooth depression in the earth. "It's as if this section of reality was removed," Eleanor breathed, her scientific mind struggling with the impossible scene before them. At the edge of the depression, they encountered a dying German officer. With his last breaths, he clutched Harrington's sleeve. "Glock," he whispered. "Die Glock hat versagt." The bell has failed. Before they could process this information, machine gun fire erupted from the tree line. German soldiers had arrived, led by an SS officer who seemed more interested in eliminating witnesses than capturing prisoners. In the chaotic firefight that followed, Klein was hit, collapsing behind a fallen tree. Garcia dragged him to cover as Harrington and Eleanor returned fire. Miller, seizing the opportunity amid confusion, grabbed a fallen weapon and took aim, not at the Germans, but at Eleanor. "The equations in your notebook," he snarled. "That's the real prize." Harrington saw the betrayal unfolding in slow motion. Eleanor's research wasn't just analysis. It contained insights into whatever technology had created that perfect absence in the forest. 3 shots rang out in rapid succession. Miller fell, blood blossoming across his chest. Behind him stood Klein, wounded but upright, his smoking pistol still raised. "He was never one of us," Klein gasped before collapsing again. As German reinforcements arrived, Harrington made a devastating choice. He handed Eleanor the intelligence they'd gathered and the film from Klein's camera. "I'll hold them here. You run. This has to reach Patterson." "James, that's suicide," she protested. "This is bigger than any of us," he replied, thinking of Sarah, of Heisenberg, of all that had been sacrificed. If Hitler deploys more of these weapons, the war won't just change, reality itself might. Their eyes met in a moment of perfect understanding. Then she was gone, disappearing into the forest as Harrington turned to face the approaching German troops, determined to buy her every possible second of escape. As bullets tore through the underbrush around him, Harrington's final thoughts weren't of fear, but of scientific curiosity. What had they witnessed? What impossible physics had Germany harnessed? And most troublingly, what would the world's powers do with such knowledge after the war? 3 months later, Eleanor Wright sat across from General Patterson in an underground bunker beneath Washington, D.C., her face gaunt from sleepless nights. "Your report challenges everything we thought we knew about German weapons research," Patterson said, sliding the classified folder across his desk. "A device that can remove sections of reality?" "We call it spatial displacement," Eleanor replied. Based on the evidence and Klein's recovered photos, Hitler's scientists created something that briefly warped the fundamental forces of the universe. Patterson's weathered face remained impassive. And the cost? Catastrophic. The German officer's dying words were correct. The device failed. It didn't just remove that section of forest. It consumed itself and everyone operating it. A self-terminating weapon. The implications hung heavy in the air. The war in Europe had ended weeks earlier, but a new conflict was already taking shape, the scramble to capture German scientists and their research. What about Heisenberg? Eleanor asked. In Allied custody, Patterson confirmed, along with dozens of other German scientists being redistributed. Operation Paperclip, Eleanor murmured, the classified program's name slipping out before she could stop herself. Patterson's eyes narrowed. That designation is beyond your clearance, Doctor. Is it? After what I've seen. After what happened to James. The mention of Harrington shifted the atmosphere in the room. Against all odds, he had survived the confrontation at the blast site, though barely. German forces, equally mystified by the weapon's effects, had taken him prisoner rather than executing him. He now recuperated in a military hospital, his body healing faster than his mind. Harrington's debriefing suggests the Germans never fully understood what they created. Patterson continued. Their wonder weapons program was compartmentalized, left hand not knowing what the right was doing. Hitler demanded results, so his scientists gave him prototypes and promises while the truly dangerous research happened in secret. Eleanor leaned forward. The most disturbing part isn't what the Germans built. It's what they almost built. Klein's final reports suggest Heisenberg deliberately sabotaged certain aspects of the research, introducing subtle flaws that prevented worse weapons from functioning properly. You're suggesting German scientists were secretly working against Hitler? Some were. Others were true believers, Eleanor said. The wonder weapons were real, General, just not in the way Hitler proclaimed them to be. And now their creators are being brought to America. 6 weeks later, Eleanor visited Harrington at Walter Reed Hospital. His physical wounds had largely healed, but a haunted look remained in his eyes. They're calling us liars, he said without preamble. Official reports state we encountered an experimental conventional explosive, nothing more. Eleanor sat beside his bed. The blast site has been classified. Garcia has been reassigned to the Pacific. And Klein, dead in service to his country, Harrington finished bitterly. A convenient narrative that omits he was never really our agent to begin with. And Miller's betrayal never happened, Eleanor added. His family received a letter citing heroic actions behind enemy lines. They sat in silence, two people who had glimpsed something the world wasn't ready to acknowledge. I spoke with Heisenberg yesterday, Eleanor finally said, causing Harrington to look up sharply. Under the guise of scientific consultation. He confirmed what we suspected. The German wonder weapons program was deliberate misdirection, 90% fantasy designed to waste Allied intelligence resources. And the other 10%? Reality-altering experiments conducted by a faction of Nazi scientists who answered directly to Himmler, not the military. Most German generals thought it was nonsense, hence their dismissive comments about Hitler's wonder weapons. While the truly dangerous research continued in secret, Harrington concluded. Exactly. The Germans created the perfect diversion, weapons so outlandish that reasonable people would dismiss them, while hiding actual breakthrough technology in plain sight. Harrington's hands trembled slightly as he reached for a glass of water. What happens now? America, Russia, England, they're all racing to secure German scientific knowledge. The next war has already begun, James. A war of intellect rather than bullets. In the months that followed, both were recruited into a classified division tasked with analyzing captured German research. Their experiences had made them uniquely qualified to separate fact from fiction, genuine breakthroughs from elaborate deceptions. Working closely together, their professional relationship evolved into something deeper. Both carried wounds, Harrington's grief for his wife, Eleanor's guilt over the Manhattan Project work that would soon devastate Hiroshima and Nagasaki. When news of the atomic bombings reached them, Harrington found Eleanor alone in the laboratory, tears streaming down her face. "This is just the beginning," she whispered. "The German Bell device, our atomic bombs, we've opened doors that can never be closed. Then we make sure what comes through those doors doesn't destroy us," Harrington replied, taking her hand. A year later, as autumn leaves fell outside their new research facility in New Mexico, a package arrived from Switzerland. Inside was a letter from Klein, very much alive, and pages of equations. He faked his death, Harrington realized, scanning the carefully coded message. And he's still working with Heisenberg. They're continuing their work, Eleanor said, studying the equations. Not building weapons, but understanding the forces they unleashed. The letter's final paragraph contained a warning. What Hitler called wonder weapons were merely the first glimpse of forces beyond our comprehension. The Bell device didn't fail. It succeeded in ways its creators never intended. Something came through, James. Something noticed us. That night, Eleanor and Harrington stood beneath the desert stars, contemplating humanity's new place in a universe more complex and dangerous than anyone had imagined. The generals were right to dismiss Hitler's wonder weapons, Eleanor said softly. The irony is they weren't nearly wonderful enough compared to what was actually possible. Harrington nodded, his arm around her shoulders. The real wonder isn't the weapon, he replied. It's whether we have the wisdom to control what we've discovered. As classified reports of unusual aerial phenomena began crossing their desks in the years that followed, both recognized the uncomfortable truth. The end of World War II hadn't brought peace, but merely transformed the nature of conflict. The wonder weapons had evolved beyond their creators, understanding, opening doors to possibilities both miraculous and terrifying. And somewhere in the mountains of Argentina, former SS scientists continued experiments beyond any government's knowledge or control, pursuing Hitler's dreams with technologies that blurred the line between science and the supernatural. By 1947, as reports of strange aerial phenomena multiplied across America, Harrington and Eleanor had established themselves as pivotal figures in the government's classified research into unconventional technologies. Their first-hand experience with Hitler's most secret programs made them uniquely qualified to recognize the patterns emerging in the post-war world. On a cool September evening, they stood together on the porch of their New Mexico home, watching distant lights move in impossible patterns across the night sky. The genie can't be put back in the bottle, Eleanor said softly. What began as Hitler's desperate fantasy has evolved into something beyond any nation's control. Harrington nodded, the scars on his hands visible in the moonlight. The greatest irony is that his generals were right to dismiss the wonder weapons, not because they were impossible, but because even Hitler couldn't imagine their true potential. Their work continued in the shadows of American scientific advancement, their warnings sometimes heeded, often ignored. But they found purpose in their mission, to ensure that the darkest technologies of war might someday serve the cause of peace. The legacy of Hitler's wonder weapons wasn't found in the rockets that later reached the moon, or the jet aircraft that transformed global travel. It resided in the humbling realization that humanity had glimpsed forces beyond its comprehension, and in doing so, had announced its presence to whatever else might be watching. The wonder isn't in the weapon, Harrington often reminded young scientists under his guidance. It's in whether we possess the wisdom to wield what we've discovered. If you've made it this far, you're clearly fascinated by the hidden histories of World War II. There are countless stories still waiting to be told about the scientific race that shaped our modern world. Hit the subscribe button to join us as we explore more declassified secrets and untold narratives from history's most pivotal moments. Drop a comment below with which historical mystery you'd like us to investigate next, and don't forget to share this video with fellow history enthusiasts. The past may be written, but its deepest secrets are only beginning to emerge.